Mother? Is it you? Guess not. Go away! I don't know who you are or what you want, but I have to play this song right! Practice, 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 practice. Do you understand? Now leave me alone!
I wasn't ready for the sheer bonkers roller coaster ride that is D2. Yes, I was aware to an extent prior to playing that D2 goes places that few other games go. Covering the prior two games from its creator, Kenji Eno, those games being D and Enemy Zero, there was a common consensus amongst the comment sections. If you think these games are outlandish at their core, wait until you play D2. To those who left those kind of comments, you were not kidding around. At first, D2 looks to take heavy inspiration from John Carpenter's The Thing as its sole focus. But before you know it, it's going in all sorts of directions and tangents, as if Kenji Eno had ideas for about 5 different games and combined them into one. And for what the game tackles and explores, I could see someone like Hideo Kojima, a close friend and admirer of Kenji's work, going, dude, what was that all about? D2 more or less breaks all the common conventions when it comes to crafting a story. In many ways, it's another mess and can make only a lick of sense at times. And yet, somehow, unlike a modern Bethesda title, all of this just works. It's memorable and an experience that I'll never forget. I'd put D2 near the top of the list for games with incredible stories but substandard gameplay. Games where you play for the plot. Planescape Torment being number 1 on that list. I've covered other games on the channel that would fall on this list, like Rule of Rose, one of the darkest survival horror title stories around, or Deadly Premonition for its sheer wackiness and an earnest love letter to Twin Peaks. But D2 takes a different approach to its story than these mentioned titles, and falls more into the conventions that you would find in a Kojima title. That said, it's very much an original voice through Kenji Eno's writing. For it's a good thing the story delivers in droves, because its gameplay is nothing to write home about. The prior title in the Laura trilogy, Enemy Zero, had a combat system where few games could match its tension and stakes. It was a bit rough around the edges, but it was enthralling at all times. Few games made each shot count as much as Enemy Zero. D2 is not that. Instead of building upon Enemy Zero's gameplay, it goes for something more stock. Random combat encounters with the lightest of JRPG elements that act as a glorified shooting gallery. It can have its moments, especially during boss fights, but it more than wears out its welcome by the time you hit the third disc of D2's 4 discs, where the only thing keeping me going was to see what massive left turn the plot would take next. So let's dive into the world of D2, shall we? There is plenty to go through and share with you. If you played D2 before, I hope this acts as a nice trip down memory lane. If you have any insights into the plot that I miss, do mention in the comments below, for there is so much within that I have no idea what to make of. And for those unfamiliar with D2, buckle up. I will also recommend checking out the videos on the prior 2 titles in the Laura trilogy, that being D and Enemy Zero. D2 stands on its own, but the knowledge of them will supplement the roller coaster that is D2. D2 kicks off with a lengthy cutscene, about 10 minutes in length. A bloody man trudging through a winter not-so-wonderland. A woman sits by a fireplace in the cabin, with a woman resting in bed nearby, who seems troubled by dreams. We see a meteor making its way to Earth. It's as if someone has summoned it here. It's Christmas Day 2000. We cut to the woman we saw resting in the cabin from earlier in an airplane. They're flying over the frigid stretch of northern Canada. This is our protagonist, Laura Parton. This marks her third and final appearance as a digital actress in this D trilogy. In D, she was Laura Harris. In Enemy Zero, she was Laura Lewis. With that surname, Parton, as far as I know, there is no relation to Dolly, But some of Laura's behaviors and actions did evoke elements of that one Dolly Parton song, Dumb Blonde, where the chorus closes with, "Just because I'm blonde, don't think I'm dumb, 'cause this dumb blonde ain't nobody's fool." As we will see throughout D2, Laura will have several questionable dumb blonde moments. Laura will have a small bonding moment with the girl sitting in the row in front of her. The man sitting the aisle across returns her compact that Laura dropped.
Excuse me, miss. You dropped this. Wow, it sure is a pretty compact. You wouldn't want to lose it. It's from your mother, isn't it, Laura? By the way, were you having a nightmare or something? You were mumbling and talking in your sleep. Are you all right? Well, I don't fly too well myself.
We cut to a passenger further up the aisle, a cloaked man chanting some kind of nebulous incantation. I don't think his name ever gets mentioned in game, but the manual does. Norex Georgida. With his appearance, his chants, and the most villain-appropriate name, it shouldn't come as a surprise he will be our adversary. That said, you know there's no chance he'd be able to get away with what he's doing here in the post-9/11 world. No way would he make it past airport security.
Shadow the final destroyer. For the sake of creation, all must be, from chaos unto order. Shadow the final destroyer. Shadow the final destroyer.
A couple of Norix's cronies announce their intentions to the passengers. This is a hijacking, and repeat words spoken by Norix.
The final destroyer, the great shadow, is coming. Pray and celebrate the coming of the final destroyer, our lord, the shadow.
Some passengers try to play hero, but fail. The man across from Laura, who returned her compact, has better success. He notices that Laura's compact has some kind of magical properties, showing the incoming meteor about to strike the plane. He grabs Laura to run as the meteor smashes into the plane, causing it to crash in the barren northern Canadian wilderness. We cut back to the cabin from earlier, this time as an in-game cutscene as opposed to an FMV. Laura survived the crash, with a woman sitting by the fire. The man from earlier is nowhere to be found. Before continuing, I want to bring up an earlier iteration of D2. Instead of surviving the plane crash during the game's intro, Laura would die in it. Instead of playing as Laura, we would play as her unborn son, warped back in time. Instead of terrorists, some supernatural event would cause the plane to crash over the ocean. Laura's son, now a teenager, would find himself in a European castle centuries back. From the blurbs of gameplay that trickled out, it looked to be a more conventional 3D platformer. Made me think of the N64 Castlevania titles. This earlier version of D2 looked to be more of a direct follow-up to the original D. The D2 that would release that I'm playing here has next to no ties to D. It has far more ties with Enemy Zero, which released between the two games. This initial D2 was well into development before finding itself scrapped in early 1997. It was set to release on the Panasonic M2, the follow-up console to the 3DO. The first D was a huge hit in Japan. It sold over 1 million copies on the 3DO alone before coming to the Saturn and PlayStation. With the cancellation of the M2's release in early 1997, D2 found itself almost cancelled, but Kenji Eno pushed onward. He didn't want to let his team down in canning the game. In fact, they were days away from signing a development deal with Nintendo for the N64, as the PlayStation and Saturn weren't powerful enough for what they had in mind. Before they signed the deal, Sega approached Kenji about their future plans with the Dreamcast, then known as the Katana. They would sign on to develop D2 for the Dreamcast, but decided to start from scratch. I am curious to what they had in mind with the M2 version of D2, but that was not to be, for don't worry, there's much to dive into here. Before diving back into D2, I did want to bring up the state of the gaming industry at this point in time. As we saw in the game's intro, the game begins on Christmas of 2000. D2 was released days before Christmas 1999 Japan, and late August 2000 in the West. This was a time of transition, swan song to the 5th generation, the PlayStation, N64, Saturn era. Sega would get over a year's head start with the 6th generation of consoles with the Dreamcast release in Japan in late 1998. The system would launch almost a year later in the West on September 9th, 1999, or 9/9/99 for $199 as they used in their marketing. But they were soon to face stiff competition in the console space. It's incredible to note how much changed in the industry between the release of D2 in Japan and its release in the West. A mere 8 months, but what an 8-month period it was. Starting with Sony, who released the PlayStation 2 in Japan in March of 2000. Compared to the Dreamcast, it had a far shorter time gap of its availability in the West, releasing later that year in October. The PlayStation 2 would dominate the 6th generation and to this day remains the best-selling console of all time. Mere days after the release of D2 in the West in August of 2000, Nintendo would host a fabled edition of their Space World trade show, one where they would unveil the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube that would release in 2001. You gotta love this GameCube reveal. Booth babes brandishing GameCubes to a Michael Jackson song. There was a new challenger entering the console space. In March of 2000, Microsoft would reveal a prototype of what would become the Xbox. For a company known for its bountiful business blunders, Microsoft made one of their better decisions that summer by buying Bungie to help with their launch lineup for late 2001. In a twist of irony, Microsoft did look into reacquiring Bungie in their recent studio acquisition spree. They decided to pass and let Sony grossly overpay for them. Microsoft has made countless business blunders the past few years, especially in the gaming space, but passing on Bungie looks to be one of their wiser moves day by day. Back to this time frame of 2000, the writing was on the wall for Sega with competition on the horizon. Despite the head start for the 6th generation and being ahead of the curve with online play, too many problems piled up. Unlike the PS2 or Xbox, the Dreamcast did not have a built-in DVD player. They had issues in getting third-party developers on board. They lost goodwill with customers due to their handling of the Saturn. The console's low price point hurt their bottom line. There was a large discrepancy between the Eastern and Western divisions of Sega. Sega would announce in late January 2001 they would cease development of the Dreamcast that spring. Swallowing their pride, they exited the hardware market and focused on being a third-party software developer, which, while they've had their ups and downs, continue to do so to this day. It's an interesting what-if to think what would happen if Sega took another crack at a new console. Would it have worked out for them, or would it have killed the company dead in the water? I lean towards the second possibility. Much was going on in the hardware space, but what about the games? In that 8-month time frame between D2's release in Japan and the West, you had several landmark releases and games that would become cult favorites. I've covered several games on the channel from this time frame. To note, some of these games did release in this time frame in Japan only, with some Western releases later that year or in 2001. This is very much a swan song period of the 5th generation and the rise of the 6th generation, like Resident Evil Code Veronica, which released in early 2000 on the Dreamcast. Still with fixed cameras, but now with real-time backgrounds. While it's a decent game, I consider it one of the lesser entries in the series, where the series started to get quite silly with its lore. During the writing of this video, we got the reveal of one of the industry's worst kept secrets, a Code Veronica remake. But hey, if these RE remakes are going to sell 10+ million copies with the greatest of ease, why would they stop? On the note of swan songs, Thief 2 would release in March. Looking Glass Studios would close mere weeks later. A fantastic follow-up to what may be the peak of the stealth genre. Hell, some of the best games ever made. Continuing on the immersive sim front, June would see the release of Deus Ex. Depending on what day of the week you ask me, it's the greatest game ever made. Unparalleled player choice and freedom with a plot that continues to age like the finest of wines. For swan songs of the PlayStation 1, you had Parasite Eve 2, which did release mere days before D2 in Japan and not long after its Western release. A sequel that pushed survival horror elements to the forefront and the RPG elements further back. On the note of RPGs, you have the overlooked Kudelka that blended elements of survival horror and the JRPG in a similar vein to the first Parasite Eve. 25+ years later, it still has some of the greatest voice acting I've come across in the game. Looking outside my scope of games I've covered on the channel, you had many monumental releases in this time window, like The Sims, which took elements of SimCity and zoomed in all the way into the household. It's one of the best-selling games and series of all time. You had Final Fantasy IX, Square's send-off for the series on the PlayStation 1, a title that took things back to the series' roots in a more fantasy-oriented setting. Rare would release Perfect Dark, a spiritual successor to GoldenEye 007. They took everything they learned there and improved upon the formula they established. You'd have Majora's Mask, integrating time travel as a key component and would tackle darker themes for the Zelda series. There was another D2 in the summer of 2000. That being Diablo 2, a time from when Blizzard could do no wrong. Diablo 2 has longevity like few other games ever had. There's even more games we could bring up, and I'm sure you will in the comments. You had more to follow later in the fall and winter of 2000, and then you get into 2001 with the PS2 in full swing and the launch of the GameCube and Xbox. A year that you can make a strong argument for being the best year in gaming, along with years like 1998 and 2004. For that leap between the 5th and 6th generation, nothing has come close since. That leap in graphic fidelity, the higher frame rates. By this point, most of the earlier kinks of 3D gaming, like the camera and controls, had been worked out. While budgets and team sizes grew, they were still small enough to allow for experimentation, where companies were willing to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. I mentioned it throughout several videos, but this 6th generation timeframe is what I consider the golden age of gaming. And looking through my audience demographics, many of you did live through this era in some shape or form. Before circling back to D2, there is one more game I want to bring up. A landmark Dreamcast title that released days after D2 in Japan, that being Shenmue. A game that would become the 3rd best-selling game for the Dreamcast, only behind Soul Calibur and Sonic Adventure. I do bring up Shenmue as I did find an interview with Kenji Eno and Shenmue's creator, Yu Suzuki, from this time frame. There's a funny line from Yu about wanting to spend less time making a single game, for Shenmue took years. Moving forward, at least at the time of the interview, Yu was determined to make games within 1 year. With the change in game development and his perfectionist tendencies, that wouldn't work out.
What is Shenmue gonna 3 gonna be like? Well, this is actually Shenmue parts 6 through 14 in Yu Suzuki's grand scheme. It's in the glove box of his Ferrari. Just dig it out. It'll make a whole lot of sense.
As for Kenji Eno, well, we'll get back to that later. Let's get back to D2. D2 follows up its lengthy intro cutscene with another near 10-minute cutscene. The woman in the cabin with Laura is Kimberly Fox. She's one of the survivors from the plane crash. Here's one of the Enemy Zero connections. She looks like Kimberly from Enemy Zero and shares the same voice actress. It's been 10 days since the plane crash. Kimberly found Laura in the snow only 2 days ago, and she's been sleeping ever since. How did Laura survive? Who knows? For before we know it, one of the terrorists from the plane comes barging in. But something has changed about him. To note, they did censor this scene in the West. You don't get to see the tentacle entering Kimberly's throat. Capcom wouldn't do the same with something similar in the Resident Evil 3 remake 20 years later. Laura grabs a nearby gun to fend off the creature before another passenger in the plane comes barging in, gun in tow. This is Parker. Like Kimberly, there was also a Parker in Enemy Zero, although he never had any speaking lines as we found him dead at the game's beginning. In Enemy Zero, he and Kimberly were married. Here, they don't know each other nor trust each other. Parker brings up an interesting term to describe the monster we saw.
Wait, I haven't blossomed yet.
Blossomed?
Come on. Didn't it look like flowers were blooming from that monster? You both saw it, and there's more just like it out there. He's not the only one.
What exactly was that thing?
Who the hell knows? Some of them look like they might have been passengers from the crash. But the monsters got to them. And as you can see, they turn into...
Monsters?
Yeah, they blossom. They've turned into monsters too.
Get out.
Look, like I said...
I'll shoot. I swear I'll shoot.
Look, unless we work together, we won't get out of here alive.
I will shoot.
All right, I'll go.
Now.
All right. I get it. But listen up. And listen good. You may be armed, but there's only one way to tell whether someone's human or not. And that's by the color of their blood. Those things bleed green. But to see any blood, you've got no choice but to shoot.
There's a great air of tension and distrust among them as Parker heads off into the harsh outdoors. Laura has no memory of what happened in the crash as Kimberly tries to jog her memory. When she found Laura, she wasn't alone. She was with the young girl we saw in the game's intro that Laura shared a moment with.
Do you remember anything about Janny? Janny, the little girl I found you with. You were both lying there, in the snow, and you were trying to protect her. I brought you both back here, but she wandered off when I wasn't looking.
Whenever I heard the name Janny, I had to chuckle, for it's a name I associate with a term to describe everyone's favorite upstanding citizens of the internet, the moderator.
He's a janitor on the internet, on an anime image board. He does it for free. He takes his job very seriously.
Janny did wander off, so Laura heads off into the harsh Canadian wilderness to find her and get to the bottom of what happened and reclaim her memories. D2 has two distinct modes of gameplay. For interiors, we play in first-person perspective. It's like how it handled in D or the rooms in Enemy Zero. It's not free movement, it's not quite a point and click. Use the directions to turn, move forward, or move back, on rails in a way. This time around, it's not in pre-rendered environments, but in-game. Laura is far more snappy in her movements compared to the glacial speeds she would move in the prior two games. As well, I didn't recall any cases of path ambiguity. In the prior two games, there would be rooms where it'd be vague if you could move to a certain part of it. There's none of that in D2. A very welcome change. You could walk up to objects to open up shelves and doors or pick up items. The game will always show a brief cutscene for these, even for repeat pickups like shotgun shells or healing sprays. A very welcome option is we can skip any cutscene in D2. Hit the B button twice. You don't need to watch these pickup cutscenes every single time you come across a common item. There's an option to do a bit of free looking in these stretches. Hold the Y button to move Laura's head around. You could use this to pick up items in the environment that you couldn't otherwise. For whatever reason, these pickups won't have short cutscenes. Laura picks them up without one playing. D2 removes the limitations with regard to saving. In D, you had to beat the game in 2 hours with no saves. With Enemy Zero, you could only save in rooms and not the halls where enemies lurked. As well, you had a limited amount of saves. In D2, you could save whenever you want, wherever you want, outside of combat encounters. But these combat encounters don't lie within these cozy cabins. They await us in the harsh winter environment. When we head outside, the game switches to third person. Most stretches in the wilderness will have the camera behind Laura, although there will be points where we do get a few fixed camera angles. Ah, the winter setting. Cozy setting, is it not? Such a commonality amongst games with snow. D2 does have some of these elements, but in a different way. This isn't the kind of cozy compared to a place like Phendrana Drifts from Metroid Prime. You don't have that patented, snowy level music in these outdoor stretches. Only a short musical cue when you step outside. Beyond that, it's only the sounds of Mother Nature. But it's not as bleak as the outdoor stretches in the game like The Thing. There will be points along the critical path where the sky will change, like nighttime or the golden hour. They do plenty to create a bit of a shift to the feeling. Where the comfort levels shine is entering a nice, warm, cozy cabin, where there may be a fire lit and someone to talk to. A nice reprieve from the harsh winter that awaits us outside. Now, D2 isn't a game where you have to fear the cold, which, to be honest, would have been a good mechanic to explore since how much time we spend outside. That said, you would think Laura would try to find a better outfit for these conditions, like throwing on a parka or a change of footwear to trudge through the snow. But no, she keeps fashionable at all times. Speaking of fashion, in one of the more bizarre means of marketing D2, Laura would appear on the cover of the Japanese fashion magazine High Fashion in August of 1999, a few months prior to launch. Nice to see them making use of her digital actress ways, or in this case, a digital model. Within this issue, there were a few pages of images and the sheet music to one of the songs featured in the game, composed by Kenji Eno himself. You know, getting familiar with Kenji's work over the past few months, this kind of marketing move doesn't surprise me. Of course he would do something like this. What a time period this was. Laura won't be alone in the wilderness. She'll come across a variety of monsters like the one we saw earlier. There's a decent variety throughout the game with their own quirks to deal with. These are random encounters. We won't see them beforehand like your typical JRPG. You can fight up to 3 enemies during a single encounter. There is no option to flee. It's a fight to the death. In combat, Laura stands in place. You can't move around, although you can shift your view. Enemies love to bury underground or leap off screen. You can hit B or X to reorient yourself to where they pop up. Combat is at its best in groups where enemies like to move around in different directions. where you have to mind your surroundings of where they are. You might not kill one in time, but with enough shots from your gun, you'll send them back a distance. Then target the other enemy making a beeline for you. It can be a delicate dance to avoid taking damage. We have a few options in dealing with them through firearms. We begin the game with a submachine gun. We'll need to reload after 15 shots, but it has unlimited ammo. We'll find other weapons as the game progresses, like a shotgun or a handgun. Those you'll need to find ammo for. I did find myself getting into that commonality amongst RPGs. Oh, I should save the ammo on these for later, such as a boss. Before you know it, you're in the endgame and have a great stockpile of ammo. That said, the submachine gun and a later game replacement do fine throughout. Grenades are a different story. They're next to useless against bosses, but work wonders against mobs, as in instant kills. Great to deal with mobs of 3 when you want to keep trucking forward without another combat encounter. For these encounters, can drag. Each enemy will have a weak point. Your cursor turns red when you have it targeted, which is more or less the big glowing eye of an enemy. Attack that weak point for massive damage. Some get a bit more involved. They'll hide their weak point for a time, or you have to hit another part of them to expose their weak point. Or you can shoot them wherever. In most cases, that still takes them down in short order. Knowing the aim sensitivity, the analog stick has a ridiculous level of sensitivity. Like a small nudge pushes it from one side of the screen to the other. The direction pad is what you want for more precise movements. It's a reasonable combat system to an extent. Some bosses get a bit creative in its usage for exposing their weak point. Combat encounters in mobs of 3 can be engaging, but it more than wore out its welcome by game's end. It's not like the game throws a ton of random encounters your way, but I would find myself dreading them. Especially during Disc 3, where you have long stretches of going back and forth between locales. Encounters with one enemy would be a brainless affair, but then I'd find myself in a fight against 3 enemies without a grenade and would roll my eyes. At that point, I'm only continuing to see what comes next in the bonkers plot of D2. What makes it such a drag is how much of a downgrade it is compared to Enemy Zero, the prior title in the Laura trilogy. In my video on it, I praised its combat system to the high heavens. Few games have made each shot count as much as Enemy Zero did. Few games had higher stakes for combat encounters than Enemy Zero. Few games had filled me with such tension and exhilaration when it comes to dealing with enemies. Using only sound and positioning for combat was such an inspired choice. And while it could be frustrating at times, it had me engrossed from beginning to end. By Disc 3 of D2's 4 discs, I was more than done with its combat. I can respect them for trying something different, but I would have loved to have seen them building upon that winning, if frustrating formula they had with Enemy Zero. If they could have matched the gameplay of Enemy Zero with this bonkers story of D2, this would have been a grand slam. I'm imagining something where enemies would emerge from the snow. You had to use your line of sight and hearing to find them and deal with them. That to me is far more intriguing than these random encounters out in the wilderness where elements like resource management mean little. If they bounced it right, dealing with a cold could have added stakes to exploration where we couldn't dilly-dally around in the wilderness. But that's not what they went with. Instead, they had this rail shooter approach that lacks bite with non-existent RPG elements. As in, when you level up, the only thing that changes about Laura is her max health. Nothing else. There's zero amount of customization. Only move on to the next combat encounter. I do like this victory music track that plays after a combat encounter. The beat evokes that one combat track from Vampire Bloodlines. I also like Laura's subtle gesture of victory. Get that dirt off your shoulders. There is one other thing we could do while out in the wilderness: hunting. At the game's beginning, we'll obtain a rifle that we could use to zoom in and pick off wildlife. Hares, caribou, moose, birds. Laura, if you had some warmer gear on, I'd like to think your aim wouldn't tremble as much. When you pick one off, you'll obtain meats, plural. You could use these to heal instead of your healing kits. It's nice the game gives you the meats right away. You don't have to go up to their corpse and skin them with some long and skippable animation. I almost got myself into trouble later in D2 where, wanting to get to the next plot beat, I'd ignore hunting. Keep moving until the next destination. Then I found myself in situations where healing kits became more scarce along with hunting. And that's the gameplay systems of D2 in a nutshell. It has some decent ideas, but wonky execution. and once again a massive step back from Enemy Zero's high-stakes gameplay. But D2 does carry some of the flaws that run amok in Enemy Zero. One of Enemy Zero's key frustrations was knowing where to go next to continue along the critical path, where you'd have to wander around at random to trigger the next cutscene, without rhyme or reason as to why. While it's not as prominent in D2, it still is a major issue, and one that pops up at the game's very beginning. We start off in the southwest section of the map. North of us is a stone hut. There's a locked cabinet and safe that we can't access at the moment. Further north is the crash site, an obvious next stop. Making the trek over, head inside, and nothing. What's going on here? Did I miss something? Why, yes I did. You need to go back to the first cabin we started at, where Kimberly is after visiting that stone hut. She'll give you the key to open that cabinet there. Kim, you knew we were heading off. Why not give us the key then? Once you obtain the items from the cabinet, you have to head back to Kim once again to trigger more cutscenes. Now when you go to the crash site, the critical path will continue. It's not too big of an issue. Yet. The cabin we start at and the stone hut are not far apart, but once we get further in, especially Disc 3, D2 loves to make us wander back and forth between long stretches without rhyme or reason as to why. With how long these treks are and the constant combat encounters, it can be a real drag. But we're not here for D2's gameplay. We're here for the story that goes in directions that even Kojima would be questioning, both in a good way and a bad way. With that, let's dive into the major beats and flow of D2. Do note there will be some spoilers here for Enemy Zero as well, and I will point those out when those happen. Now, I've brought up Kojima a few times already, but you can feel his influence throughout D2. Enemy Zero could have long cutscenes, especially the game's opening, but in D2, there's far more cutscenes, and several will go over 10 to 15 minutes in length. Kenji Eno was good friends with Kojima. They both admired each other's work. Kojima took much influence in how he structured Kojima Productions after how Kenji structured Warp, his development studio. In the Kenji Eno documentary, there's a clip of them together in what seems to be a radio show that Warp ran in the 90s.
最近どうですか、ゲーム以外の興味は。映画とか行ってますか。行ってますね。忙しいのに。本当。最近なんか行きました。一昨日もののけようやく見ました。もののけまだ混んでるでしょ。いや、結構ね、空いてましたね。これ今何回もチャレンジしたんですけど、混んでて入れなくて、バットマンとかね、どうでも間違って行ったんだよね。間違って。スピード2とかね。スピード2も見てしまいました。あれは見たフィフスエレメントは。まだ見てない。行かない方がいいよ。いや、もう来週ぐらいに行こうかな。
Metal Gear Solid would release in September of 1998 in Japan and the next month in the West. I'd like to think that Kenji took much influence with how much time Metal Gear Solid devoted to cutscenes. He wanted to up the ante with D2 and how much of its runtime is devoted to them. I will note this is ironic considering Kenji's relationship with Sony. Kenji and Warp burnt bridges with Sony due to how they handled the manufacturing and pre-orders of D when it was to launch for the PlayStation 1. Kenji would cease their relationship and pledge his allegiance to Sega. Although with how much time D2 devotes to cutscenes, it would sit well with Sony's MO these days.
I haven't done any of this, by the way.
No, this is, just so you at home know, we haven't touched the controller for 45 minutes.
Bringing up this time frame of the gaming world once again and how great it was, that summer of 2000, Kojima and his team would floor the world with what has to be one of the best showings of any game ever at E3 with Metal Gear Solid 2. While there is a different flow and focus to the plot of D2 compared to Kojima's work, you can feel them being on a similar wavelength.
You think it's cruel? I did too at first. But you know, I spoke with this Norwegian hunter in a tavern, and he said even rabbits and mice have killer instinct, and that there's no such thing in this world as absolute prey or an absolute predator. He also said that it's an energy, kind of a focused awareness that binds life together. So I guess we better stay on our guard at all times to survive. To feed the flame of instinct with the fuel of life was the way he put it. The reason why consuming meat gives the body strength is because the urge to kill and the energy of life embodies the flesh. Or something like that. I guess what I'm trying to tell you is to eat a lot and get better soon.
But there are quirks to how D2 handles its cutscenes, both in a good and a bad way, a way that helps the game stand out. A vast majority of these cutscenes throughout D2 will be Kimberly talking to Laura. Thing is, Laura's silent. She'll nod, she'll sigh, she'll laugh, but she won't say a word, which can lead to several odd, bizarre moments. Nothing quite as bizarre as that one Jeep ride with Skullface and the Phantom Pain, but it can evoke that same kind of feeling. So many of the problems and conflicts that arise throughout D2 could be dealt with should Laura only speak. Now, you could say that about many games with silent protagonists, but there's a different reason why this is an issue in D2, but we'll get to that later in the game's runtime. Where more of that Kojima wavelength can occur is with the dialogue. Some of these conversations can go on for far too long, like they could have cut out a good half of some of these things that are said. Like some of the codec conversations from a Metal Gear game. There you could at least skip through them and read, but you can't do that here. Although on that note, along with skipping cutscenes, you can also pause them in D2. This era could be notorious for not letting you pause cutscenes. I'm sure we've all had those moments where nature calls, or mom needed a hand bringing the groceries, but you couldn't pause the cutscene, putting you in an awkward spot. Good to see D2 had a solution in place before many other games of this era would. Another thing to note, most of these dialogue-heavy cutscenes don't have much action going on presentation-wise, cutting back and forth between Laura and whoever else is present. Metal Gear games would mix it up by cutting to some footage to complement the conversation to mix things up, something D2 could have made use of during these conversations, although they will make use of them elsewhere, more on that in a bit. As well, they could have used a bit more energy. When it comes to presentation of cutscenes, Clock Tower 3 is one of my favorite games. There's such a unique, stage-like approach to them that drives them forward, where it seems like it points that the characters are going to break out into song, but there was such an energy to them to match the game's outlandish story. I'm not saying that Kimberly needed to be moving point to point around the cabin like a stage play while monologuing, but it could have complemented D2 well with how outlandish the story will get. For most of that comes through the words spoken, and less on the actions and visuals than it should. There is one other element to these cutscenes that detract from the overall experience: the lip syncing. These were done for the Japanese voiceovers and not the English voiceover. At points, it can be quite a distraction. Off-tempo lip syncing can be amusing, but I found it more of a detriment to D2 than a mild amusement. Then again, it wasn't the only game from around this era to suffer the same issue, but it is one worth pointing out. With that now stated, let's go through some of these major beats. At the stone hut not far from the cabin with Kimberly, we'll learn this belongs to Janny's grandpa.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Grandpa. Happy birthday to you. I hope you have a good birthday, Grandpa. I can't wait to see you again this Christmas. I love you.
In the stone hut's cabinet, we'll find a radio. Heading back to Kimberly, she'll give a long monologue about her past, her struggle with drugs, and love of poetry. Conversation that wouldn't feel out of place that Raiden and Rose would have in Metal Gear Solid 2.
At first, I tried escaping through drugs. Then, I learned to create my own little world through poetry. It was a place where there was no memory of my parents' death. And I could just be happy, you know. I recently went through some of my poems, and I realized something. Every one of my thousands of poems are so sad.
Inside the plane, one of the flight attendants appears to have survived, but all is not well with her. These blossomings are quite gruesome. I love how there's still a level of humanity amongst them in their actions, leading to a great feeling of unease.
Is everything all right, ma'am? Our current location is above Canada from the Prelude star cluster on red high-heeled shoes. The turbulence is the original ETA at St. Charles. Autopilot engaged in the galley, right on schedule. Please bring your seatbelts together and upright this line.
The flight attendant will serve as the game's first boss. The bosses do much more with the game's combat system, and are the game's most enjoyable moments combat-wise. This first boss is a simple setup of getting a feel for them. They will get more involved later on. We do have one of those annoying win in game fight, losing the cutscene moments, but Kim swoops in at the last moment to save the day. This marks the first of many times that Laura will faint in D2.
She blossomed. Hey, look. There's a butterfly. I wonder if that's a symbol of that stewardess's wish to fly. Hey, I do have some good news. Guess how I got here? I found a snowmobile. I bet we can make it out of here as long as we have that. I don't think the monsters can attack us while we're riding a snowmobile. But we don't have much gas left. Just enough to get back to the cabin. Yeah, we'll need to find some gasoline somewhere before we can go anywhere else. Let's just go back for now. It's not much, but our luck is finally beginning to turn for the better. Right? Laura? Surprised? You never told me your name. But that must be your name. This is yours, isn't it? I found it by the bed. It's engraved, to Laura from your mother, Lucy. Does that bring anything back? Lucy. That's your mother's name. Does it ring any bells? Can you remember? Can you remember her? What's she like? What does she look like? I bet she was very kind to you. When I found you lying in the snow, you were holding it as if it were so precious. During those 2 days you were unconscious, you held this close and kept calling out someone's name. A man's name. Laura, are you all right? Laura!
There's another Dreamcast horror title from this time frame that I've covered on the channel, The Ring: Terror's Realm, a game in which its protagonist Meg was a five-time fainting champion. Lore here well surpasses Meg's fainting record in D2. We cut to a scene of snow falling, with an unseen man speaking to Laura.
Laura. Are you all right? I'm glad you came too. Here you are. You don't want to lose it. It's a precious gift from your mother. Are you hurt? You don't seem to have any serious injuries. You should be on your feet in no time. Do you remember the plane crash? Our plane went down after being hit by a meteorite. The strange thing is, your compact started to glow just moments before impact. And I had a vision of a burning rock colliding with the jet. Without thinking, I grabbed your arm, and the next thing I knew, we were on this mountain. I managed to carry you down to this small cabin. You remember me, don't you? I'm David. David Brenner.
Like Kimberly and Parker, David is a quote-unquote returning character from Enemy Zero, at least in name only. This is the same man that sat across from Laura in the game's intro. In Enemy Zero, he was Laura's boyfriend, but in D2, they only met on the plane. Wonder how David's fate will vary compared to the one he had in Enemy Zero. With the snowmobile she found, Kimberly drops us off back at the first cabin. She's left to go look for some gas. The snowmobile is outside with 2 keys. Laura, in a dumb blonde moment, takes both. Laura, at least leave the keys for the snowmobile? What if Kimberly found some gas only to return to the cabin with no snowmobile key? I wouldn't be too happy if I were her in that situation. On the eastern side of the map is a mining facility, so let's make the trek over there. There's a locked gate, but a truck nearby where we could use the other key on the ring. With her delicate driving skills, Laura knocks down the gate and heads into the entrance of the mining facility. There's a key code required for the elevator that we don't have the code for yet. When we leave, Janny's grandpa arrives on the scene, almost running over Laura. He's bleeding green and will be our next boss fight. I love his kooky mannerisms turning more monstrous as he talks to us. That fine line between humorous and disturbing, a tone that D2 nails throughout.
Hi, Jenny. It's Grandpa. Do you recognize me? We can see each other soon. I look forward to Christmas. I'm sure you've gotten bigger. I'll bet you get to see the grand aurora in the sky when you come. I'll get a cherry pie for your birthday, since you love cherry pie so much to eat under the aurora sky. I'll be waiting, sweet child. Sweet, sweet child.
This is one of the game's better fights. You could hit him anywhere to whittle down his health, but you're best waiting for an opening of the weak point to do more damage. The way he talks throughout reminds me how the Taken mock you in the first Alan Wake.
So, you're going to see white doves fly out of thin.
Only the free fatty acids are good for your heart.
Once again, Laura faints, and we have another scene with David talking to us here. He's from around these parts.
Your color's coming back. I'm sure you're gonna be just fine. The snow's so beautiful. You know, I actually grew up in these parts. When I lived here, snow was nothing but a dreary pain. But now it seems... Oh, this flower? This is a Canadian flower. I'm gonna keep it as a good luck charm. My mother used to press flowers, I remember. I wish I could bring you luck and protect you. But how can I? Why?
Laura awakens back in the cabin with a worried Kimberly watching over her. Did she carry us back here? Man, Kim is a true ride-or-die friend. In this scene, we get to learn more about her drug issues with a drug called Linda.
Oh, this. It's medicine. Just medicine. Would you like some? It's called Linda. It's very popular these days. It helps me relax and somehow seems to make everything crystal clear. I guess it sort of frees you. Maybe it'll even bring your memory back. Can't live without this stuff. I'm a real mess, aren't I?
With a key card Janny's grandpa dropped, we can access the safe in the stone hut that gives us a shotgun, and the code to the elevator at the mines. Before we leave, a couple of survivors make their way in, as Laura hides underneath the bed. It's one of the terrorists from the plane, and what sounds like Kimberly, but there's something off about her.
He started it, talking nonsense about how he was going to resurrect the shadow. How the hell was I supposed to know what he was talking about?
Shadow?
Larry's on some bad stuff. He's been hanging out with this weird sorcerer, going on and on about how they're going to build a perfect world. This creep's got us on the same stuff, this Linda crap. And it's like, you're gone. You see weird stuff like a huge seed stuck inside ice that shines. You know what I'm saying? When I saw it, I just knew it was the shadow. No one told me. I just felt it. So I really don't know anything. All my buddies got killed in that crash. And Larry's turned into one of those damn monsters. I don't know if that means he's dead or alive, man. He even tried to eat me, you know that? What am I supposed to do now? Come on. You gotta help me. I don't know anything. Nothing at all. All this happened because of Larry and Linda.
You really don't know anything?
Yes. I swear. Hey, you and me, we can get out of here together, huh? You're one tough broad. I like that. I've always had a thing for strong women, too. Hey, say, why don't we pop some Linda and do a little of this, huh? Come on, satisfaction guaranteed. Ain't no way any monster's gonna eat me. But a good-looking woman like you, that's different. What the hell? You two? No! Come on! Don't! Please! Oh my God! No! No! Ah!
So, has Kimberly blossomed? How's she able to hold it at bay? It's moments like this where you could feel the influence that the thing had on D2, that sense of paranoia and distrust. Kimberly seems alright, but is she hiding something from us? We have to make yet another trip back to the mines, in a noticeable case of padding. It's only going to get worse from here on in. In some ways, D2 is ahead of the curve with what we see in modern gaming. Long cutscenes, excessive padding, but at least it makes up for it in other ways. Inside the mines, we get a unique situation that only happens here and nowhere else. For all other interior sections, we are on rails in our movement. But here, we're first person and have free movement, like how it was in Enemy Zero. If only D2 had those same enthralling combat encounters. Instead, it's more random encounters to deal with. Not only will we find some gas for the snowmobile, we'll also find Janny. She's been looking for a grandpa, along with a moderator position that pays more. I hope she could double the salary of her last moderator role.
You saved me, Laura. Thank you. Thank you. I knew I'd see you again. Where's Kimmy? She's okay too, isn't she? I wanted to find Grandpa, but I got lost. I'm sorry. What's going on? Laura, what's happening?
Fainting once again, we have a different voice talking to Laura amongst the snow. This is where D2 begins to show its hand in how outlandish the story will become.
Laura, Laura, Laura. Awake, Laura Parton, in the name of the Great Mother. I have found your soul at long last, and through it I can speak to you. You must fight, Laura. You must fight for all mankind. For all life that I have created. I am the Great Mother, creator of all things.
Laura awakens back at the cabin with Janny in tow. Kimberly tells us we fell out of the sky from a bright golden light back into the cabin. Well, whatever saves me from having to do a long excursion in game to get back here, I'm fine with. Janny gives us her tragic backstory in only a way a naive child could.
Where are your mom and dad?
My dad went away a long time ago, so I went on the airplane with my mom. But she fell asleep.
Fell asleep?
The airplane crashed in the snow, and I got really cold. My mommy held my hands like she always does. My mommy's hands are so warm. But her hands kept getting colder and colder. I told her that her hands were cold, but she said it was because of the snow, and that everything would be okay. Then she kept getting colder and colder. So I tried to warm up her hands like she always did, but it didn't work. She said it would be okay, and we just held hands. and Mommy went to sleep.
Oh, Jenny.
I'm sorry, Kimmy. That's why I didn't want to go to bed. I was scared of going to sleep. So I tried to find Grandpa instead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay, Jenny. You don't have to be scared anymore.
Will I fall asleep and go away too?
Not you, Jenny. You're going to be perfectly all right. Because you've got Laura and me. It isn't going to be easy. But remember this, Jenny.
Huh?
You can never give up hope.
Hope?
Yes, hope. It's the most important thing anyone can have in life. To believe. To keep believing and never give up. Not ever. To have a bright light burning in your heart. As long as you believe. That light will grow stronger and brighter to light your way.
Oh, I understand. Grandpa always says, Jenny, even if bad things happen, have faith in tomorrow.
That's right, Jenny. You're so strong.
Uh-huh. Hope. I know about that now. Grandpa taught me a lot of things.
With the snowmobile filled up, the three amigos head off to see what else they could find as Disc 1 concludes. Disc 2 begins with the cloaked man from a plane trudging through the snow, his destination unknown. Laura, Kimberly, and Janny arrive at a large cabin as we resume gameplay. To note, the stretch between finding Janny until now has been around 15 minutes of cutscenes. Left alone to explore the cabin, there's a restroom in the back. Boy, someone has a sixth sense of humor. I mean, you could squat over that, or take a leak over if you're a man, but this does not seem like the safest spot. While out on her restroom adventures, looks like we have a couple of visitors, including Kimberly now donning a towel. But where is Janny? Like Kimberly, this man seems to have a Linda addiction, but far more off his rocker.
It's Linda. You want to take some? This stuff's different from the usual stuff they sell. It's more potent and really works. You don't need any, because you're gonna die soon anyway. Or are even monsters scared of death? I guess it doesn't really matter, huh? It doesn't matter what happens to you because you're not human anyway. Are you? You're not human.
You're wrong.
You say such crazy things. What's not true? I saw you with my own 2 eyes. What wasn't true about how you mutated into that thing? How you attacked my father. How you ate him! Ate him!
You're wrong.
Liar! You're disgusting. Go on, why don't you show yourself? Go ahead and blossom into your sick, disgusting, real self. Right now. Come on.
In another case of a dumb blonde moment and cutscene incompetence, Laura draws attention to herself by flicking a light switch by accident. This unhinged man ties up both Kimberly and Laura. He wants to watch us blossom, thinking we're both monsters. Well, he'll be right on one account.
Aha! I knew I was right. Now I'll show you. This is for what you did to my father. What the fuck?
So there you go, Kimberly has blossomed, and I can't show most of the scenes as she's naked as the day she was born. But then the real Kimberly comes in and shoots the Blossom Kim. So was Kimberly cloned? During the game's intro in the cabin, was that tentacle that went down her throat, was that enough to make a creature copy of her? So many questions, so much intrigue. Well, that one shotgun shell to Creature Kim wasn't enough, as it comes back to life in a boss fight, which again I can't show due to the nudity. This Kimberly we fight bleeds green, the other one red.
Gives me the creeps. I guess they have the ability to replicate the exact physical appearance of their victims. Oh. Do you think I'm... Don't worry, I'm human. You can't clone a person's mind. I suppose they grow at an accelerated rate from a DNA sample. A brainless Xerox copy. I guess if they're capable of a real conversation, they're probably not a clone. But they do learn pretty fast. Did you notice how that one could talk a bit? It was mostly mimicking, but in the end, maybe you can only go by the color of blood.
Moving forward, most of these elements that evoke the film The Thing will fade more into the background. D2 will bring other outlandish elements to the forefront, as we saw at the end of Disc 1. With further downtime, Kimberly will give her reasoning why she was on the flight. Which leads me to wonder, we know why Janny and Kimberly were on the plane, but why Laura?
I took my medicine, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't a trip. It was kind of a vision. A vision of a landscape. And after that, I could see it almost every day whenever I took a dose. I knew I was being called there. And then I saw the place where this drug originated from, in a newspaper. The article was about Linda, how it was extracted from a type of lichen only found in the tundra of northern Canada. It mentioned that Linda triggered psychosis and aggression in some people, and that several violent murders in the past few years were committed by perpetrators who had taken Linda. And that even many acts of cannibalism had been reported. The story went on about the relationship between human aggression and instinct, but I couldn't take my eyes off the photograph. I was mesmerized by it. It was exactly what I seen in my vision. The same landscape. And that's why I got on that plane. Of course, you know the rest.
Kimberly gives us the keys to the snowmobile that we can now use in this area. There's a nearby pharmaceutical building that we can visit. The snowmobile seems like a welcome addition, at least at first. I thought it would handle like a chocobo, in the sense that while riding it, you wouldn't have any combat encounters. But no, you still have to deal with the random encounters. There were some oddball issues with how it handled. I thought it might have been an emulator glitch at first. For whatever reason in this area, Laura loves to fly off the snowmobile at a moment's notice. To the point it turned over in such a way I couldn't get the right way back up. But this is the only place where this issue would happen for some reason with the snowmobile. All other times it was smooth sailing. In the nearby pharmaceutical building, we will find another Kimberly corpse, one that bleeds green. Wonder how many of them are running around. There's one of the few quote-unquote puzzles here. They're like the puzzles in Enemy Zero that require knowledge of counting in binary. These ones are far more straightforward. There's this one machine that upon operating will flip through a series of numbers. You need to write down the numbers here to use elsewhere at a nearby observatory. And here at the observatory, D2 will take yet another left turn in what it brings up. There's a dying man here on the verge of blossoming, talking to a computer with a name we've heard before. As well, he'll bring up the name David, the man we saw from the plane and who's been talking with us. This man is David's father, Kenny.
Linda, I'm so happy that the two of us can be together at this moment. Who's there? Is someone there? Is that you, David? No, couldn't be. So we have a visitor on our last night. I don't know what you want, but don't come any closer. Please. I don't want anyone to see me in this debilitating condition. You know what I mean, don't you? A monster has gotten me. Oh, I'm still alive, but I'm beginning to change. I'm transforming into a monster myself. Linda, this may be a suitable end for someone like myself.
No matter what happens, you are still you.
Linda, I remember everything so clearly about the night we first met.
So do I, dear.
The stars were so beautiful.
As they are tonight.
As strange as this conversation already is, it's about to get stranger as David's father gives a long exposition dump.
It was 2 years ago, while studying eclipses and old sundials, that I realized the truth about Stonehenge. By mapping the light and shadow patterns of Stonehenge, then computing them against the position of the stars, I came to the conclusion that Stonehenge had been used to predict solar eclipses, and as I made further progress, I finally discovered that Stonehenge was actually created to predict a specific day, the final day of all days. The end of everything. This discovery shook me to the very core. For 30 years, I had waited for the apocalypse, and with that knowledge within my grasp, my mind recoiled in horror. Earth was about to die, along with everything in it. Was this what my heart truly desired? I christened the day the Great Eclipse and tried to pinpoint the exact time of its occurrence. By then, I had changed my mind. I wanted to save this world and needed to know when the end would come and how it would occur. Unfortunately, it took more than 1.5 years for the computer to calculate the answer. It was only 3 days ago that I learned that the Great Eclipse would fall on December 25th in the year 2000, on Christmas Day. But who would listen to the ravings of a madman?
So there you go. Stonehenge has entered the fold, where the dewdrops cry and the cats meow. I knew going in D2 was going to go places, but boy did it ever manage to surprise me. Kenny here mentions he sent for David, his son, who is an FBI agent. After the crash of the plane and the meteor, these creatures began to emerge.
By limiting our concerns to those of humanity alone, we have lost sight of the stars. We have no memory of our beginnings and will perish unaware in the end. All we could do was briefly glimpse into the chasm of time. I have a favor to ask of you, stranger. Would you please commit us and everything here to flames and ashes? Destroy all traces of my work. There is nothing more I can do, absolutely nothing. What good will a warning be to a new civilization that is sure to evolve in tens of millions of years? What little humanity I had left was taken by those creatures. At least allow me the dignity to choose my own end. Please, break the glass by your side and get the flamethrower. You must put an end to all you see here.
To note, we can't use the flamethrower in-game as a weapon, which is a bit of a bummer. Although we will make use of it elsewhere shortly. So from what I gather, this computer here is Kenny's wife, Linda. Did he transfer her mind to this computer and program it to act like her? Kenny mentions another son, John, who works at the pharmaceutical building nearby. Was this the man we saw back in the cabin? Was it Creature Kim who attacked Kenny here? Unless I missed something, D2 does leave many elements up in the air to fill in the blanks. That said, there is an archive that will fill up throughout the game to help you keep up with all the game's many, many happenings. After we torch the place, we will have another one of those David cutscenes. He talks about having a strained relationship with his father and how he reached out to David to come home. Using the flamethrower, we can now open up an entrance back at the pharmaceutical bay. Amongst the piles of research, you'll find a picture of David before someone locks us down here, causing Laura to faint once again. It did look to be Kimberly who locks us down here. Is this another clone of her? But she was dressed up. Was this under the influence of Linda? The Great Mother will stop by for another chat, followed by another case of trippy imagery. I did mention earlier that I wish some dialogue talks would cut away to other footage like the Metal Gear Solid games would do. Well, these cutscenes with the Great Mother will have flashes of footage that wouldn't look out of place in a Metal Gear game. Those who played the first D will also recognize some of these sound effects here. This wraps up Disc 2 as we move on to the third. Parker's out and about, driving around, minding his own business. Laura has another Deus Ex Machina moment, the Great Mother warping her right onto the hood of Parker's truck.
Hey, you alright? Wait a minute. You were in that cabin, but you just fell out of the sky. What the hell is going on?
Helping Parker and pushing the truck, Kimberly and Janny will reunite with us on the snowmobile. We found a new temporary safe house for the time being. It's during this meal that Parker will tell us his reason for being here.
A yellow light. The same light that Laura came down in, only much, much bigger. A huge curtain of light appeared from the other side of the ocean, then grew until it enveloped everything. It was almost as if the light was shielding the planet.
Oh, spare me. You think you saw God or some planet-sized guardian angel?
Actually, I work for a legitimate organization that studies things not too far removed from that.
CETI, right?
How'd you know?
Center for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It's pretty famous as far as bands of deluded UFO-crazed loonies go. You're, showing off one of their caps right now, genius.
My team is currently studying the underlying causes of why the dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago.
What? Maybe you think a flying saucer caused this, too.
No, we're talking meteors here.
Meteors?
2 major fragments from a meteor impacted on this planet. One hit the Yucatan Peninsula, the other struck northern Canada. You know what? I also think that a meteor caused our plane crash.
So you're saying that an asteroid took care of the dinosaurs, and now they're after us?
In a sense, yes. I can't help thinking that these events are the will of the cosmos. A warning, even a punishment, directed at the dominant species on this planet. We're doing our best to follow the fate of the dinosaurs, and the powers that be are trying to...
Kinda new agey, aren't we? Here, try the chemical equivalent.
Drugs? I don't recommend it.
Kimberly mentions that there's a man upstairs at the end of the hallway. We could stop by for a visit, at least from the outside. He's locked himself away and practicing away on the piano.
Stop it! Stop it! Just stop it! Why won't you leave me alone? Don't you understand? Every note has got to be perfect! You can never understand. Just leave me alone. Go away! Go away! Go away! Get lost!
In case you're wondering, this song is Ronda alla Turca by Mozart, or the third movement of his 11th piano sonata. I had to look up one of those classical songs you've heard but don't know the name of videos on YouTube. This was the third song played. Packing it in for the night, we'll see the cloaked man from the plane continuing his excursion amongst the frigid winter. He'll come across something glowing along the side of this mountain, something that doesn't look to bode well for us.
God of destruction, allow me to reach you and be in your presence. Grant your great powers unto me.
Awakening the next morning, we'll stumble across Parker and Kimberly arguing about the Linda pills that Kimberly is taking. It does seem at points that Kenji Eno, who wrote the game, is making commentary about the abuse of prescription drugs. But as far as the things and themes the game tackles, it's more in the background.
You can't just drift in a narcotic dream and call it life. You're bartering yourself away for a make-believe world, paying with pain, yours and others. So what's the difference between that and how those pathetic monsters exist?
Fine. There's not much chance that I'll make it out of here anyway. And even if I did, I'd just be alone again. In the dark. I'd rather turn into a monster and not have to think or remember or feel anything anymore.
Don't say things like that. I'm so sorry.
Don't bother. For all your fancy talk, you're just like any other man. All you need is an excuse to start hitting.
That's not true. I just want to help. I only want to make you feel safe.
These excursions on Disc 3 is by far the game at its worst. You'll have long stretches between a handful of locations that we'll need to go back and forth between, some without rhyme or reason of which one to go to next. Sometimes the game will warp us back to our temporary home base, but this is the exception and not the norm. For good stretches of this disc, we have no access to the snowmobile. Although the game does change up the combat music for encounters moving forward. But man, can this stretch drag itself out. One of the reasons I gravitate toward horror games is they tend to do a much better job of respecting the player's time. They don't pad out their runtime like so many other genres do, especially in the modern day. But by Disc 3, I was ready to start looking for some kind of cheats to skip through these encounters at a faster rate. These long treks in Disc 3 put a major damper in the game's pacing. But the wacky story beats kept me going despite everything else working against them. One of the far-off locations on the map has a marking of Lucy Parton Laboratory. Parton. I wonder if there's any relation to Laura. Down the road is an old stone structure, with an even older man and a parrot within. He has quite the prophecy to share with us.
You're the final visitor prophesied in this book. Stay and listen to what I have to say about Knife's prophecy. Have you ever heard of William Knife? Last year, he prophesied in his book that a holy figure who oversees the balance of all things would soon come and serve the people responsible for all wrongdoings. Do you know what I'm speaking of? I'm talking about that meteorite that hit the northern mountain that gave off a golden hue.
To protect this turning star from the crimson shadow, and awaken from the folds of time an ancient lord of destruction. Only then will hope lie with a child of destiny, born on both shores of history.
Terrible, terrible things. A golden flush tinted the sky, and on that northern mountain, fearfully known as Death Mountain, fell the meteor. Thus, the prophecy is fulfilled, and you are possibly... No, I ought not ask. It is not sanctioned to involve an outsider in this zealotry. Hence, go safely, my daughter.
Returning back to our safe house, there is no longer a piano man tinkering away at the keys. We can enter the room. This piano puzzle can be a bit tricky. You have to repeat the first 5 notes to Rondo alla Turca that we heard the man playing. If you're not musically inclined, this may take a few tries to get right. Felt like something Kenji himself designed, a well-versed musician, and didn't consider how an average player might do with it. It's not as tricky as the infamous piano puzzle from the first Silent Hill, but it can throw you for a loop. Unlocking the back room, we'll find a semi-auto rifle, along with a key for one of the houses down the hill. For a good stretch of Disc 3, I wondered why I wasn't coming across any ammo for the semi-auto rifle. I kept it tucked away until a harder encounter. Well, it turns out it's like the submachine gun. You need to reload after 10 shots, but it has unlimited ammo. It has far more firepower than the submachine gun. Had I discovered that sooner, my time with Disc 3 wouldn't have been as frustrating. With the key we found, let's check out the home down the hill. Not sure why Laura didn't try to knock earlier, for there is a woman inside. This is Martha. She's the mother of the piano player we heard earlier, whose name is Tom. It was pretty funny during this cutscene to see the collectible items in the background. I couldn't wait to grab those after Martha got through her speech.
You see, I forced my own ambitions on him. When he was just a little boy and wanted to play with his friends, I made him practice the piano every day. Locked him in the cellar and forced him to play from morning till night. And finally, I brought him here to the middle of nowhere so he would have nothing but his piano. But as if that weren't enough, I gave him a drug called Linda. I wanted to give his fingers, his hearing, an extra touch of power. But it was the devil's medicine that I gave him. It put him on edge and brought out the worst in him. I saw it myself one day. I saw him in the barn playing. He was cutting rabbits and birds to pieces and laughing. He saw me, then approached me. "Mom," he said, and he was holding a burning log in his hand. "Mom, I can play the piano really well," he said. "I can play really well, Mom. Are you happy now?" Then I couldn't believe it. He shoved that burning log right into my face and burned me. And this is what happened. Oh, the agony. Only then did I realize for the first time what he had been through. What I had done to him. His pain. Oh, God, what am I going to do now? I don't know what to do.
As annoying as this stretch can be with regard to exploring, I did like the cozy atmosphere with the sky shifting to the golden hour. It does offset some of its issues. Another case of not knowing where to go next. To get Kimberly and Parker to reappear back at the safe house, we need to make another visit to the old man in the stone structure. He and the parrot give us the game's equivalent of "with great power comes great responsibility" talk.
No man is truly evil or truly good. There is only the power of evil and the power of good, and all depends on how that power is applied.
I know not whether you are the destined one, but I have told you what I needed to. Perhaps the human race has gone too far. It seems that my task in life is done. I shall wait here for the last candle to burn out.
Returning to the safe house, Kimberly will tell us that Janny is once again missing before she herself wanders off. Parker will tell us about a stone bridge that has a locked gate. He tells us to keep an eye out for some dynamite. Returning yet again to the old man the parrot, the old man is dead as the parrot flies off. Only one candle remains. In the back is a handgun and explosives that we will need for later. Heading back to the woman's house, she's now gone, but the terrorist from the plane that we fended off from the first cabin will return for a fight.
See, my body's back to normal, too. Even if my blood's green, I'm still a human being. Is that what you want to kill? Come on, trust me. We're both human, aren't we? It's okay. You can trust me. See? Trust me. No, not again!
What follows is a bit of a frustrating fight. It didn't help as I hadn't quite discovered the semi-auto rifle handled like the submachine gun with its unlimited ammo. It took far longer than need be. On his dying breaths, he gives a bit more info on what the hooded man is up to.
You've got to stop him. He says he's fusing with the shadow, becoming one with him, to get the power to destroy the world. Said that the shadow's been asleep in Death Mountain up north for 65 million years. Now the meteor woke it up. You've got to stop him. Now that I've turned into this thing, now I realize that I've wasted my life. My wasted life.
But surprise, he has one last ounce of strength, and Laura yet again passes out and returns to the realm of the Great Mother. I always welcome these stretches, not only for the trippy visuals, but knowing that Great Mother would warp us around once again, saving us from yet another case of tedious backtracking. This time we get footage from the turn of the 20th century, and thanks to the Great Mother, she will drop us off back at the safe house next to Parker. And then we have yet another long trek to go find Kimberly. She's all the way down by the gate, which is quite the venture. Why we need to do this instead of having her at the safe house, I don't know why. The only answer that pops to mind is extend that runtime. To say D2 tested my patience on this disc is an understatement. It seems like something is blossoming between Kimberly and Parker, and I'm not talking about these creatures emerging. Parker will set the bomb for 15 minutes that Kimberly can take down to the gate to set off. But he made a mistake.
Hey, what do you think of her? To tell you the truth, I had my doubts about her at one point. I thought maybe she'd already gone floral. Turned into a monster already. I guess I was wrong. She's got a monster inside, all right. But it's a far more terrible kind. It's called loneliness. Everyone has a measure of it inside, but somehow she just can't learn how to keep it under control. And this loneliness is eating her up. Damn. Isn't there anything I could do for her? Maybe if I were a priest, I could offer her faith. If I were a warrior, I could protect her. I'm just me. I can't offer her anything. It's been days since that crash, and Hey, what time is it? Holy shit! I didn't set it for 15 minutes. I set it for 1,500 hours. Don't you see? I didn't set the thing to go off in 15 minutes. It's set for 3 p.m. There's only 5 minutes left. Kimberly! Wait,
There's a snowmobile for us to take down, and no need to worry about combat encounters. It only takes about a minute to get to the stone bridge, in which Laura pulls off yet another dumb blonde moment.
What do you think you're doing? We have to blow this gate.
Laura, why not throw the bomb at the gate, take Kimberly and run, instead of throwing it off to the side? Back at the safe house, she's not happy to say the least with Parker. Kimberly will indulge us more about her upbringing. Her dad died while she was young, leaving her mother with a great debt. The loan sharks hounded her mother, who would eventually take her own life as a result, and Kimberly ran away. She takes Linda to cope with the pain. She also tells us about her feelings for Parker.
The thing is, I started taking Linda to deal with my dreams. But I just can't deal with men anymore. I can't even face him in the same room. That's why when Parker said he just wanted to protect me, no man has ever said a thing like that to me before. I didn't know how to react, but I'm going to apologize to him in the morning. I know I can trust him. And this time, I'll stop pushing him away. I promise. Yeah.
The next morning, Parker reveals a sad truth. It looks like he and Kimberly are destined not to be together.
Look at this. I've somehow been infected. I'm still all right. I haven't blossomed yet. I'm still thinking straight. And I can make my own decisions for now. But it's only a matter of time, and I can't risk harming you two. I gotta go.
You can't.
You'll be all right. You're not like the dinosaurs. You have this, and this too. Just know it's never too late. Being human means having free will, and the challenge is making the right choice. Nuclear power can be used to destroy cities or explore outer space. Drugs can be used to cure mental illness or escape from the world. Your choices are yours. That's also true of what you do with your heart. Maybe humanity, every one of us as individuals, is being told it's time to grow up. I'll see you around. Don't die, either of you.
No, wait. Maybe we could still find a cure. There's no need for you to just leave like this.
Do you think you'll miss me when I'm no longer myself?
Yes, I will.
Will you remember me?
Of course.
Then just smile for me. Smile for me, Kimberly. That's it. Come on, I know you can do it.
Oh, Parker.
Thank you, Kimberly. You'll never be alone.
After Parker leaves, Kimberly comes to the realization that Parker had the other bomb. He took the snowmobile down and detonated it, sacrificing himself to blow open the bridge. But before we cross this bridge, we'll need to find Janny. Heading back to the safe house, Janny awaits us, but she's not alone. The woman from the cabin, Martha, has come by for a visit.
You. It was you two who did that to my boy. To my Tom. Little monsters. Was it fun torturing him? I saw how you treated him. You fed on him, didn't you? Did he taste good? How did my little boy taste? Come. I'll treat this little one like you did my son. I'll eat her down to the bone and enjoy every last bite.
This fight against Martha could have been one of the better ones in the game, if not the best. Once again, you have Rondo a la Turca playing in the background. This adds a fun dynamic to the fight. She leaps around all over the place. You need to rid her of her tentacles for a time before getting a headshot for high levels of damage. Thing is, getting a headshot was finicky beyond belief. I never got a handle on why I would or would not land a headshot. If you miss that window for headshot, you would only do a trickle of damage. She will then respawn her tentacles and you have to repeat the process all over. This caused the fight to drag on far longer than need be. Arriving at the destroyed gate, we come across an infected Parker. But Kimberly takes matter to her own hands and she dies along with Parker as they embrace in the game's saddest moment.
Kimberly.
It's a tragedy that bears resemblance to the relationship they had in Enemy Zero. Giving a quick spoiler warning for Enemy Zero, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Parker dies at the beginning of the game, and it takes Kimberly some time to come to terms with it. Before we escape the ship, Kimberly herself decides to join Parker in the afterlife. Dropping the poem she wrote, we'll get a voiceover from Kimberly of her reading it. Quite the poem here. Takes a good 3.5 minutes to get through it all. Once again, we find ourselves in the realm of the Great Mother, who has choice words for Laura and her destiny, followed by more trippy visuals.
Laura, do you know who you are? You must learn the truth, for the evil one is giving himself to a fear for power even now, and together they shall become the shadow. Laura, you are the chosen one. You must awake.
Setting aside the grieving process for the time being, Janny and Laura head off across the bridge to the glowing red mountain in the distance as we close off Disc 3 and head on to the fourth and final disc. Laura and Janny arrive at the entrance of the Lucy Parton Laboratory. The doors won't open for just anyone.
Please state your name.
This is Laura. Laura Parton.
Oh, now you decide to talk, Laura? After everything that's happened? You could have saved plenty of headaches, heartaches, and possibly the lives of Parker and Kimberly had you spoken up prior. Now, Enemy Zero did have this issue as well. Laura wouldn't talk with the others. She would only talk while saving or loading a game or her final send-off in the game's ending, but she spent a vast majority of the game alone. Wasn't as big of an issue. Here it sticks out like a sore thumb. I'm not sure why they didn't have Laura scan her eyes or her hand instead to access the slab and keep her silent. As well, her speaking at this moment will undercut a couple moments in the game's end stretch. Once we enter the interior of the lab, now we need to scan our hand to confirm our identity. The computer mentions our last visit here was 27 years ago. Janny won't have access to enter the lab, however, and waits behind for us. There's a computer that will give us yet another large exposition dump about Dr. Lucy Parton and the LPL Corporation. A brilliant researcher, Lucy Parton founded the LPL Corporation with her father, Roy Parton. Their focus was research into molecular biotechnology, genetic engineering, and cloning. Lucy was most focused on mammoth cell cloning. Her team found a preserved woolly mammoth in the 1960s. She would die in 1973 by a research-related accident. That's 27 years ago. Computer mentioned Laura was last here 27 years ago. We can inquire the computer about cloning technology, but its data has been erased. But we do have access to an elevator that will take us deeper into the lab. And once again, D2 continues to surprise me with what we find. While Lucy Parton may be dead, like Linda, Kenny's wife from earlier, her mind lives on through a computer. Now I know I played out a good portion of the cutscene's major beats as opposed to me summarizing them. Some of these conversations are best left for the game to explain. This is very much one of those moments. Take it away, Lucy Parton.
I know that you've come very far, my beloved Laura. It all began 38 years ago with a genetic memory asleep in a wall of Arctic ice. In 1963, I began working on a special project using cloning technology to bring mammoths back from extinction. My team discovered a perfectly preserved mammoth specimen in the winter permafrost of northern Canada in 1971. And we were able to extract genetic material from the cell nucleus. Unfortunately, there was too much chromosome damage. But we found something else. In the stomach of that frozen mammoth, we found the undigested remains of a totally unknown organism. Mammoths were believed to be herbivores, but this one anyway had apparently eaten another creature. And what a creature! It looked human, but had a pair of wings sprouting from its back.
We removed him. Yes, the creature was male. From the stomach for further study. Then I decided that we would extract a sperm specimen and attempt fertilization using my ovum and in my womb. I decided to give birth to a hybrid child fathered by this winged human. The fertilization was successful, but the embryo developed without a trace of wings. That made no difference to me. The child was the fulfillment of my dreams. A miraculous collaboration between me and that being we found inside the mammoth. The baby was born in the early hours of December 31st, under the most spectacular display of Aurora Borealis that winter. It was born across that span of time. I took the first letter of my given name and added the Latin word for air, aura, and named the child Laura. It's true. That was how you entered this world, Laura. When I was in labor with you, I had a vision. Something akin to the will of the cosmos spoke to me and described something important. That a powerful spirit had appeared in the space-time continuum and was on its way to Earth from the far reaches of space, and that it would arrive on Earth when my child had become a grown woman. At that moment, for the first time, I felt the enormity, even the sin, of what I had done. But at the same time, I saw in you the hands of fate. Then, 7 days later, my own life ended. But others at this institute and the government wanted to repeat the experiment. They wanted to bring those winged human beings of prehistoric times back to life. They transferred my mind and will to this, to Xylo. But without a compatible ova or a willing surrogate in which to bring the embryo to term, their efforts ended in failure. Look. Laura, you must kill me. End your mother's torment so that no one will ever repeat this mistake. Do it now, while I still have my will.
I've already said this a few times. I knew going in D2 gets out there. But even with that reputation, D2 continued to surprise me. So a winged human found within a preserved mammoth. An angel? Seems like it. But what was it doing within a mammoth? And why did Laura not have wings? And what on earth was that about Lucy having a vision about some spirit appearing in the space-time continuum and making its way to Earth? Kenji Eno, were you taking the drug Lucy when putting this story together? We have a quote-unquote boss fight against Lucy, but this is a narrative fight. One of the more effective ones I've come across in the game in some time. There's nothing here that will damage us. We'll shoot parts of the machinery as Lucy begs for her death. Saying it's unsettling is a great understatement, and the fight ends with some not-so-subtle imagery. As the building collapses around Laura, we cut back to the hooded man, his powers growing into something formidable and beyond our comprehension. To get us out of this tight situation, the Great Mother returns for another chat as we get more trippy images of war. The Great Mother whisks us away to the cabin at the base of the mountain, with Janny resting next to us. When she awakens, Janny will tell us about a dream she had. She seems to be seeing the images that Laura has been seeing in these moments with the Great Mother. This will also be Janny's final appearance in the game.
I had a dream. There were big dinosaurs walking around. And then lots of people making buildings in the desert. There were some people on a ship crossing a big ocean. Then people were shooting at each other with guns. I saw big trees being chopped down and jet fighters in the sky. And then a really big explosion. There was a space rocket going straight up, and astronauts hopping up and down on the moon, and animals getting shots in a lab. A big wave of water came and washed away a town, and a whole mountain caught on fire. There was something that looked like a forest, but it was all missiles instead of trees. It was kind of like when you fast forward a long movie, but I knew it wouldn't go the other way. And I thought that's what's really important. Time is the only thing that can't go back. It's kind of like a lesson. Like Grandpa teaches me.
And now there is only one thing left for us to do. Make the ascent up the mountain to deal with the cloaked man and the shadow. While it's a long ascent, it's a straight line. There's no need to go back and forth between multiple spots like the prior disc. There's a great sense of foreboding as we know what's waiting for us at the top of the mountain. There's plenty of items along the way for us to pick up, but no more hunting, which almost got me in trouble as I started to disregard hunting during the third disc. I only wanted to see what was next along the critical path and ignored what I could. Healing options became sparse as a result, for it is quite the climb upward. Before entering the cave, we have another talk with the Great Mother. This time there is a flower growing amongst the snow, following yet another vision.
This is Mother Earth. This is your home. Awake unto it.
David gives us some encouraging words for the fight ahead, telling us that we shouldn't worry about him and we must survive. At long last, we come face to face once again with the Hooded Man, or Shadow the Final Destroyer. It's time for the final battle between Light and the Shadow to occur.
Fool, you think you can stand in my way? All that exists shall follow the path of destruction. And your human race, and even this planet, is no exception. The will of the cosmos will not be denied. What is there left to save mankind? Grown old without growing wise, and this planet, not content with its first folly, it creates a second, even more foolish dominant species. All this shall be destroyed, and all must begin anew. Go now. Get out. How dare you challenge my power?
This final boss is a fascinating one, a wonderful melding of gameplay and narrative. In many ways, it does remind me of the final boss of Earthbound. The trippy backgrounds for one. At some points, we'll see the faces of those we've come across in our journey. While we will whittle his health down, his powers still far exceed ours. Some malicious creature far beyond our strength and understanding. As the fight draws on, he'll take away our vision, our hearing, and our movement.
I feel your helplessness, your terror. Your feeble attacks are nothing. So futile in the face of my awesome power. Now you shall experience my true power. First your eyes, you will see this world no more. Nevermore.
All seems lost as we're left with 1 HP. But there's one last glimmer of hope, courtesy of David.
Laura. Laura, I guess it's time to say goodbye. Oh, Laura, don't be sad. You'll be all right. It's okay. You'll be able to make it through. And look, I have something special to give you. Here it is. I hope you'll think of me every time you look at it. I've put it away in your keepsake.
The compact we've been carrying this whole time, it now appears in our inventory. Within it resides a flower which restores our movement, our vision, and hearing, and does great damage to the shadow. With this, we're able to turn the tides of battle and vanquish the shadow. Laura now speaks for a second time.
David? David!
We have one final talk with the Grey Mother.
Laura, child of destiny, born across the shores of time. Listen well, my child. You do not know that this apparently endless universe does not have an end. That time, so infinite to misleading senses, will one day stop. You know so little, for you are but a child, a newborn. You must journey forth again, and this voyage will be far longer and much more terrifying. Now is the time to find him. Do you remember? Do you remember the name of the one who saved you? It was he who safeguarded your soul. Go and find him, and thus forge that power at last into one. Laura, my child, call his name. Speak his name, so that all lives and all that will be born shall be saved. Call him and recreate yourself as you were meant to be. Now, Laura.
There's a bit of a pause here. Does the player need to do something? Why, yes you do. Press A to say a certain name.
David.
The clock rewinds to New Year's Eve, 1999. Laura warps into a bookstore. There's a book of poetry from Kimberly right next to her. There's David, once again, returning our drop compact. He is a fan of Kimberly's work.
My favorite piece in this book is this. This poem, Light. It's about a sort of hypothetical woman, the poet's imaginary best friend. This woman is... Oh, I get it now. That's why I felt like we'd met before. Ah, you remind me of her. For me, if that sounds strange, but, well, it is strange. I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful poem. Everything Kimberly Fox writes is so filled with hope and love of life. Oh, Laura, look.
David leaves the bookstore as the clock ticks down to midnight, but Laura seems to come to one final revelation along with her final words.
David!
What follows is a good 6 minutes of archival footage. This time, no trippy cuts in between. Some of the footage we've seen already, others not. Like the landing on the moon, Martin Luther King, the fall of the Berlin Wall, closing with one final shot of the Earth. But hold on, we're not done. We get a good 3 minutes worth of stats for the end of the 20th century. This includes the following: the world's population and estimated population growth, world illiteracy rates, infection and death rates of HIV and AIDS, starvation rates, malnutrition deaths, number of people living without electricity, life expectancy, rainforest destruction, changes in global temperatures, changes in the concentration of atmospheric carbon dioxide, percentage rates of plants, freshwater fish, saltwater fish, birds, and mammals on the verge of extinction, along with the total number of species expected to go extinct annually. I am curious to see what these stats are like these days. And then, the credit roll. But with a game like this, you know there must be something post-credits, right? We get a date showing the internal Dreamcast clock counting down to 2001. Well, that's if you played the game back then. Now it only shows the current date of when I did play it. And that is it for D2. Ladies and gentlemen, what did I just play? Again, I sound like a broken record, but I knew going in that D2 would get out there. But I was not prepared for what was to come. I knew it took heavy cues from the thing, which it does, but those do fade into the background, especially once you get to the end of Disc 1 and the Great Mother enters the fold. Then you get into the realm of some great final battle between the forces of light and the shadow, one that seems to have spanned millions of years. There's angels, mammoth cloning, prescription pills addiction. Feels like Kenji Eno took ideas he had for like 5 different games and threw them all into one. Not to say that D or Enemy Zero didn't get out there. D with its endgame reveal of its connections to Dracula. Enemy Zero took heavy influence from Alien, but added splashes of elements from Blade Runner. But D2, not even the same ballpark when it comes to its outlandish nature. Now the thing is, D2 has nowhere near the dissection that other games have, but certainly deserves it. Bringing up Kojima again, look at titles like Metal Gear Solid 2 and how much they've been picked apart, dissected, placed under the microscope. I did find a plot guide on GameFAQs for D2 that did help, but even then, there's still so much up in the air. Starting with the Thing connections with the blossoming, how does this infection work exactly? Especially with regard to Kimberly. The game brings up elements of cloning, but that seems to be something separate altogether. We do see at least 2 clones of Kimberly, at least I think we do. There is implications that on her high dosage of Linda, Kimberly did kill certain characters, like the old man with his parrot. That was the real Kimberly, and not a creature version of her. Was it the meteor crash that caused the blossoming to occur? Kenny in the observatory seems to suggest that. Did the summoning done by the Cloakman play a part in it as well? Where does he come from? How did he become the vessel for the Shadow? What kind of commentary was the game trying to make with the Linda medication? Bringing up the dangers of prescription pill abuse? How does Linda work exactly? Kimberly mentions it was found here in northern Canada from a lichen. But what about the flower found in the compact? Does that have ties to Linda? Why was there an angel buried amongst the stomach of a woolly mammoth? How did Laura survive the several days after the plane crash? You know, Kimberly does bring up that Laura looks to have been well fed. At one point, Kimberly does bring up cannibalism, which is a significant element of the first D. Did Laura eat David to survive, or did the Great Mother intervene? Why do we go back to New Year's Eve of 1999? Now, to be clear, this isn't a reset that made everything that came before all for naught. It's clear Kimberly is a changed woman through her poems. Although what happened to Janny? Looking back at my footage, I tried to spot her in the background, but to no avail. And what was with all these stats about at the end? Commentary on how we need to better respect Mother Nature? There are so many questions I have. And D2 can, in a way, handwave most of the way through the Great Mother and the Shadow. Two primal forces that battle with one another, each with their respective pawns into place to duke it out. Laura being the vessel of light, the Cloakman being the vessel of the shadow. Most of this seems to be up to fate outside the control of us mere mortals. But what made Laura the child of destiny? Was it by chance her mother found the angel within the mammoth? Or was that the work of the Great Mother at play? Now, there is further answers beyond the game, although I don't know how canon they are. There was a short manga done for D2. I'm using that in the manga, Laura speaks freely. It does give more context to Kenny's computer that he based off his wife, Linda. There's much more angelic imagery of Laura being an angel, but it's not a be-all end-all for answers. Not that it needed to be. That's the thing about D2. It breaks so many conventions of what you should do for telling a story. If this were more conventional, it would have stuck with something along the lines of The Thing. That's more than enough to devote sole focus to within a story. Play up the themes of paranoia and distrust, which the game does for a time, but then takes several left turns and moves away from it. Then you have side tangents about poetry, drug addiction, dinosaurs, it's all over the place. Once again with the Kojima connection, it reminds me plenty of Metal Gear Solid 2, which had some incredible moments and focused plot threads, especially when it came to the AI conversations in its endgame, but has so many side tangents and other plot threads with varying degrees of success, where the story is a bit of a mess. And that is the same case for D2, although in a bit of a different way. The story is an absolute mess that felt like 5 different game stories in one at points. It defies so much of the conventions you should take with regard to telling a story, and yet somehow it all comes together. By no means a cohesive package, but one that is memorable, one that you won't forget, one that you can't help but respect. Before we move on to the aftermath of D2, I do want to bring up one more point about Laura talking. I love the moment where you get to press A to David. It took a moment when I realized the game was waiting for me to press the button, a means of turning the tide against the final boss. The thing is, the game undercuts this moment by having Laura talk earlier, where she first needs to enter her mother's lab by stating her name, as well before we cut to the moment with the Great Mother where we call out to David, or calls out to him in the cutscene as we vanquish the Shadow. It did take away some of that weight and impact of when the game prompts us to call out to David. With that, what was the reception of D2 at the time? Looking at publication scores, most scores fell on the 6 out of 10-ish range. This headline from its GameSpot review is a great one-sentence summary of the game. Kenji Eno has created one of the most engaging stories of all time and given it support in every way possible, except for the one that matters most: gameplay. Hard to argue with that. Sales-wise, the game sold around 170,000 copies, a bit of a disappointment. A far cry from the first D, which managed to sell well over 1 million copies in Japan alone. On the note of this 170,000-ish sales number, I'm not sure if that's Japan alone or if that includes the 37,000-ish that were sold in the West. To be fair, D2 found itself hampered by being stuck on a Dreamcast. Its best-selling game for the system, Sonic Adventure, was 2.5 million copies. Soul Calibur in second place with around 1.3 million, and Shenmue at 1.2 million. Shenmue had a lengthy development period and was unable to recoup its costs. D2 had a longer than usual development time for the era. I couldn't find anything concrete, but I'd wager they did not recoup their budget. It's too bad D2 finds itself relegated only to the Dreamcast. Enemy Zero will at least have a PC release around its launch. D2 is a perfect candidate for some kind of remaster. The first D received one from Night Dive to get running on modern hardware. Here's to hoping D2 gets its moment in the spotlight of a re-release for modern hardware. After the release of D2, Kenji would step away from the industry for a time. He'd work as a consultant on a wide array of projects. One project involved buying Coca-Cola from a vending machine using your cell phone, pre-smartphone days. Another project was rebranding of an old Japanese hotel. It was the Nintendo Wii that piqued his interest in getting back into game development. He would release You, Me and the Cubes in 2009 in what would be his last game. He moved into the world of teaching game development for the next generation of game developers. Unfortunately, Kenji Eno would pass away of heart failure in 2013 at the age of 42. He leaves behind a fascinating legacy, one that's been a joy to uncover and experience these past few months since I first played D. Part of me begins to think of all these what-if scenarios if he decided to carry on after the release of D2 instead of taking a near-decade-long break from the industry, or if he were still alive today. I would love to have seen what he and his team could have done further into the 6th or even 7th generation of gaming. I would love to have seen something taking heavy cues from Enemy Zero with regard to gameplay and the story ambitions of D2, or even something new altogether with this realm of horror. They were never a team shy to experiment. I could have seen him becoming more like a Suda51 with regard to commercial viability. Never blockbuster level sales, but titles with a devoted audience. And while they could be all over the place quality-wise, you would be getting a more unique experience. If he did continue after D2, I could see Sega, now with a sole focus on software, having him around as one of their gaming auteurs. Let him and Warp come out with something, support them, and if it sells well, great. If not, try the next one. I don't quite envision a future where he would have the commercial appeal of Kojima titles, who is very much an exception and not the norm amongst the gaming auteur space. Would he try to one-up him with even longer cutscenes? I doubt he would go that far. Would he make use of lore in the future with the digital actress concept? Or would he become more like Kojima has the past few titles, where it seems like he uses these projects as a means to hang out with celebrities? Whatever would have happened, he was gone far before his time with his immense talents and ambitions. Very much a soul who marches to the beat of their own drum. It's been a great pleasure these past few months to dive into the works that Kenji Eno created. Ones I've been meaning to cover for some time, and ones I'm kicking myself over for not having covered sooner. I did take a bit of a pause after Enemy Zero before diving into the final title of the Laura trilogy. Seeing all those comments where the common consensus was, just you wait until you play D2, those sure built up the intrigue for D2. I was aware of its reputation going in with regard to its story, but even then, after all your comments, I was nowhere near ready for what D2 had in store. It's all over the place, it's messy, I still don't know what to make of most of it, but my goodness, will I remember it. If only I could say the same about its gameplay. I lament to see D2 take such a step back from what they did with Enemy Zero. By the time I reached Disc 3, the only thing keeping me going was the story and what would come next. And it's a shame that Kenji would take a near-decade-long break from the industry and come back with a title that looked intriguing, but had nothing in common with this trilogy of titles. I would have loved to have seen another title from him and Warp that took the high tension and stakes of Enemy Zero and blended it with the ambitious, bonkers stories like D2. Enemy Zero is a game I could see myself coming back to now and again. D2, I got my fix. But boy, will I be thinking about story for some time, for all the good and the bad that comes along with it. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so. Try that newfangled hype feature as well if you're on your phone. I don't know exactly how it works, but it does seem to help boost videos in that confounded YouTube algorithm. Curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below, especially for those well-versed in D2's story. Any insights you have that I overlooked, feel free to mention them. If you would like to support the channel further, do consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member, or leave a one-time donation through a Super Thanks or Ko-fi. Special shout out to the Boulder Punchers who give extra support to the channel. For those in the complete global saturation tier, American Boot, Flan Nagel. For those in the thank you for your patronage tier, Tom Terrible. For those in the now this is Boulder Punching tier, Ethan, James Warner, Cray, the Madman in Waco, Nate 2, the original Narcy's Diet Thick Do TM Neo Edition. For those in the Jill Sandwich tier, On Hell, Benji, Benny Winterdawn, BB F. Bloxburg, Dragonfang Studios, James Kilgore, Leonard Aronson, Logan Lepin, Mad Morpheus Gaming, Mikkel B, Nico Pero, Sam Jones, Squid Vicious, Strababina, Vinyl Morpheus, Will Han, and Zin. And now for the post-video Q&A, so those in the Jill Sandwich tier and above can ask these. One question for this video from Flan Nagel. If you were tasked with making D3, what would you do? Would it be a direct sequel or a completely different story? Where would you take the player and what genre? I would do like D2 did here, have elements of the prior games here and there, but something that is a standalone story. Still stick in the realm of horror, but go for something more Southern Gothic. Something along the lines of the first season of True Detective. Something that pulls more Lovecraftian elements. There's tiny bits of Lovecraft within D2, but I would love to see what kind of take Kenji Eno would have had if it was something more at the forefront. I've mentioned it many times throughout, but on the combat front, do something more akin to Enemy Zero. With Lovecraftian elements, you could play around with that quite a bit. On the exploratory side of things, I'd like to see something more detective heavy. Think something along the lines of LA Noire. I would love to have seen a D3 go along those lines. So thanks for the question, Flannegel. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. I will see you in the next video.
Shadow the final destroyer. 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 Shadow the final destroyer.